Lisa Savage. Good evening. Welcome to Pathways to Progress. This is my last show. Can you believe we've been doing this for almost 3 years? And when we started, Councilors Roberta Rodriguez and Victoria Pelletier were brand new, fresh men and women on the council, learning the ropes, and now here they are, seasoned veterans. And we're going to do a show tonight where we kind of debrief with them about, hey, your 3 terms of the council, what was it like, what's changed, and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to offering this show to you. So welcome, and thanks for being here. Victoria, do you want to get started with a softball question?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So if your 3-year term on the council were a social media platform or a Portland restaurant, we'll make it a little easier, which one would it be and why?
Oh my God. I love this question, and I was thinking about it because there's so many. I feel like I've had 3 really different years too. So it kind of changes. But my first initial reaction was one of my beloved bars, Bubba's in Portland, really matches my term because when you go into Bubba's, it's like you don't know what the night is, where you don't know where the night's going to take you. You walk in and it's like there's a lot happening. You know you're going to have fun, but you don't know like how or what, who you're going to see. I think it's like very kind of like beautiful, wonderful, fun chaos. So I think of that, I could think about my term for a bar perspective. It's probably like one of my favorite bars in Portland, which is Bubba's.
This is Bubba's Sulky Lounge.
This is Bubba's Sulky Lounge, standing strong. And one of my favorite places, which I always take friends there that don't live here or are just visiting Portland, and it's always like, you guys ready to go to Bubba's? You ready to experience Bubba's? And so I feel like that's what I think about with my term. Are you ready to experience Councilor Victoria on the council? So I think, I looking back on my term, I feel like that's probably the most reflective. Is like, it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be a little wild, and you have no idea what's coming around the corner. And that's probably like how I can sum up my term.
Okay, great answer. Roberto, what about you?
I think I'm gonna go the social media route, and I think like it's like Facebook, right? It's like a whole bunch of like old people arguing and a bunch of young people looking at them like, what the hell are they doing? Like it's like this disconnect almost between like the people in Portland. I think that what we experience in the dais and we experience in that room and through our emails is so at times disconnected from what we see and what we're actually experiencing day to day, and what I think the majority of Portlanders are experiencing. And Facebook at times feels that way. It feels like this war of ideals disconnected from reality. Maybe all social media is supposed to be that way, but generationally speaking, I think that there's a big divide in like young people, which there's just so many, and this feels like a young city, but it has an old generational vibe and attitude at times. So I think that Facebook gives me that kind of council experience vibe. Yeah.
Good one. And where would you rather be, Facebook or Bubba's?
Oh man, I want to be with Tori.
It's Bubba's all day.
All right, serious question now. Is Portland better off now than it was when you came into office, in your opinion, and why or why not?
I think it is, but it's in a different way than I think people would expect. And I do think, too, this is subjective, because I know for a fact some people are going to be like, Portland has never been worse since these 2 joined the council. But I actually think we've really opened up what being a councilor looks like. I'm really proud of us for that. The council historically, I think, has been really different than how it looks now, where we are very racially diverse. We have a lot of different identities and perspectives. We have more people, I think, now, or at least maybe half, who are first-time office holders as well, like myself and a few others, never been in public office before, and really just wanted to make the community better. And so I feel like we've opened up that playing field a little bit more now, where we're seeing more diverse perspectives run for council. And I definitely feel like that has a lot to do with us, a lot to do with some of the people on the prior council, and really being able to campaign in a different way, which I really enjoy too, with the rise of social media as well. So I think the Portland that we're seeing now, based on how we have kind of gone through the 3 years, is a better Portland in terms of now we're governing differently. I think that we are starting to have conversations that we wouldn't have had even 5 or 6 years ago. We have DEI conversations. We have the city's first ever DEI department. That I'm hoping, like, even when we're gone, will be like staffed and supported. But even that, like the city's first DEI department happening when we were on the council, feels huge. I feel like we're really moving the needle towards like what racial equity looks like, towards what climate equity looks like, what affordable housing looks like. And I think that really speaks to who's on the council and those lived experiences that are so important. So I think we are better off in really like creating a path on saying, we care about our city. We want to make it better. We've maybe never held office. We maybe are a little bit more rough around the edges than what you've seen from former counselors, but we really want to make Portland a city for everybody. And I think that we um, did our job with really creating a path towards that. So I feel really good about that.
I agree 100% with Tori, and when we look at it from that perspective of like, who's running for office, who are the leaders in our community that are stepping up, what are the issues that are really taking center stage, I think that we're certainly in a more, in a place of greater value, right? Because we're talking about issues that are way more important. However, if you ask me whether Portland as a whole is better off today, no. I think there's greater wage inequality, right? We're seeing, I remember when I first moved to Portland, one of the things that I loved about it is that you couldn't like identify where the ghetto was, right? Every other city that I lived in, it was like, oh man, that's where rich people are at, that's where poor people are at. And in Portland, I was like, oh, we're all sort of kind of everywhere. And now we're starting to see the differences, right? We're starting to see working class people in Portland being pushed out even more rapidly than before. And I think that we have the right leaders now, and people are starting to step up because they're seeing that. But I think living in Portland is harder than it ever was. I mean, I moved to Portland in 2013. I could not do it in 2024. I couldn't afford it. I can afford because I was lucky when I moved in. I'm struggling just to keep up, right? Like, just like everybody else, the day-to-day life is hard in Portland, and it's no different than in the rest of this country. So I think that the challenges are immense, but I do feel immensely proud of the people that are stepping up. And even like since 2016, when I first came into public office till now, I've seen the school board turn progressive and really advocate for like everyday families. And I see now the council turn progressive and advocate for like marginalized communities. So in that sense, I feel incredibly happy where we're at.
Well, some of the things that changed were external to the council, like so much in migration during the pandemic from people that worked remotely, have very high salaries, could afford to buy in Portland, that came from Eastern Seaboard mostly and moved to Maine. I think that's changed Maine quite a bit. And that isn't something the council can shape or change. You can respond to it, but just one of those demographic factors that's out there. What are some of the things you're proudest of in your 3-year term?
I'm proud of a lot of things in the term. I feel like I had some policy ideas that definitely like crashed and burned, but I think that I'm proud of those because I felt like in thinking about like hazard pay and pay for frontline and essential workers, especially in the pandemic, I was really passionate about that, and it definitely again like crashed and burned, but I feel like it was kind of my first experience of really taking an issue that I truly cared about based on my perspective, based on the district that I represented, and really try to bring it into the conversation. So I'm very proud about that. I'm proud of a lot of the work that we've done in health and human services and public safety, and really trying to make sure that we are leading with like a community-based mindset, trying to make sure that we are advocating as much as we can for our unhoused community. There were several times that myself and the other counselors were going against the city manager in her office for encampment sweeps. We put out multiple statements saying we don't agree with these encampment sweeps. It was just kind of at the time, the 3 counselors versus like the city manager, but we made our stance really known on a lot of those issues of saying we don't agree with this. We think that this is going in the wrong direction. We want to really advocate for marginalized and under-resourced identities. And I think that we pushed back a lot. And that wasn't easy because of course, like you never want to like cause any type of unnecessary disruptions, but I'm really proud of the fact that at the time, it was the all women committee as well. I don't know that we've ever had that before. It's myself, Councilor Tavaro, and Councilor Fournier, and the 3 of us were really advocating for making sure that we are just leading with community, leading with equity, and so because of that, we really spoke up a lot in the past year about the things that we don't agree with and the things that we want to do differently within that committee and outside of it as well. So I'm proud of the fact that there were a lot of times that we spoke up, that I spoke up. Obviously, some of those times didn't go as great as I would have hoped, but I'm proud that the person that got elected and the person that I am now are the same, and that feels really good. I said like, oh, I'm going to talk a lot, I have a lot to say, and I did that, whether people liked it or not. I felt like it was the same, and so that I feel really proud of as well of really standing on what I believed in, despite people saying this is a terrible idea, or nobody's with you, or the public being like, we hate this idea, or we don't like this person. I'm really glad that I felt like I really stood in power for District 2, which is like arguably our most diverse district and the district with the most renters. And I really felt like I had their back in a way that maybe they haven't had before. I feel like that was really important to me to advocate for those who had historically had not been heard at City Hall. And I feel like I did that. So I feel proud of that.
And you endorsed Wes Pelletier to be your successor, and in
I
fact,
know.
Wes won the election.
One Pelletier to another.
Another renter.
Another renter. Yeah,
that was the reason
really
you
important.
gave, was he's a renter.
Really important. So I'm happy about that.
First of all, to be very frank, like I'm most proud that, like, maybe not most proud, but I'm incredibly proud, like, that I walked in, right? That I was there, and just proud to have been in the council. I reflect a lot on the fact that, like, at any given time, there's only 9 of us that get that privilege, right? So I'm incredibly proud just to have been given that opportunity. As far as like policy work, there's 3 things that stand out to me, and actually 4 things. One was the failed attempt to end the encampment sweeps. That asking or begging our city to temporarily, humanize the most vulnerable people in our community. And I think that while it failed, and I walked into that meeting, and Anna Trevorrow and I walked into that meeting knowing very well that we were going to tank. And we sat there through hours of testimony and being insulted and hearing people in this community being insulted and degraded. And I was so happy that I can look back and say, I sat through it. And you know what? And I stood there, and the truth teller came out. And that might have been one of the toughest nights in council work, because I felt, like the truth didn't resonate with people. And there's something about that makes you feel helpless. And then things that I do feel, successes that I do feel proud about, I think, are some of our land use zoning changes. I think when I sponsored the amendments for implementation of the LD 2003 legislature, that drastically changed the landscape of how much we can develop, how much housing can be developed in the city and who can develop it, right? Like it's no longer about developers, but like everyday homeowners can start to use their land and think of the space that they occupy in the city differently, and think about housing as a way that they contribute to a crisis that we're all suffering through. And I think the vote that we took last week through Recode, I remember when I came into the council, that was like one of the first things that I tried to do, and one of my first battles with staff was that I wanted to create a task force that was going to more frequently update the council on the progress of Recode, because I felt like it was so separated, and yet that was my whole campaign, was about like housing and building across the corridors and all that. And it was like there was this real purposeful separation of what was going on in the council. Whether that was good or not, so be it. I think that the end result, what we approved last week, is really important work, and I think it's incredibly valuable, and it will have a difference. And like I said, I'll put it into the proudest moments. And then lastly is Anna Trevorrow and I co-sponsored the funding mechanism for our fair elections, our implementation of the fair elections. And I think that I always, I talked about, I raised $8,000 for my campaign on traditional funding, and that was enough for me to win against a $50,000, opponent or somebody that raised that much money. So I know that if we were to level that playing field, a lot more people would step in, because fundraising is one of the most intimidating parts of running a campaign. And if you eliminate that and you just make it, a $5 contribution for the fund, I think a lot more people are going to step in. And I think we saw it used incredibly throughout the last 2 elections. So I'm so proud that Anna and I worked together along with the fair elections folks to help us figure out how to fund it properly. And we've advocated strongly for it during the budget against the managers and staff recommendations. And the council felt that it wasn't strong enough, felt strong enough about it to support it.
Great. Yeah, that's a very far-reaching one. That's the kind of thing where you're kind of doing it on faith, and you would see the real results 10 or 20 or 30 years down. But yeah, great. You guys have a lot of good accomplishments. Was there ever a time when you thought you were going to quit?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yep.
Do you want to talk about it, or rather not?
Well, actually, to be honest, I never would have, because I actually knew it would have been worse if I did quit. I was like, that's even more, it just would have been even more intense and dramatic than it already was. But I think it's no shock to anybody. I had a really hard couple of years on the council, and a lot of stuff coming my way that was just based on like the things that I said and how I look. And so I think that it got pretty dark for a while. We're also in like the social media era. It's super easy to like harass people online anonymously. And it got pretty severe for a while, and like the council definitely felt the impacts of that as well. I feel like it started with me, and then it kind of like trickled out to other members of the council, and then it was the entire council for months. So it was hard. There were some dark days for sure, and I think like I never I knew I was never going to quit, but there were definitely days that I really wanted to, because I was just like, I feel like this is not what I signed up for. Like I knew that I would have pushback on like policy ideas and votes, but never like just horrible like racist attacks that were just nonstop throughout like to be honest, the majority of my time.
So you did
And
not anticipate that.
I did.
This is your first time in public
Yeah,
office?
I mean, I knew I was an activist prior to this, so I'm no stranger to people disagreeing with my ideas and being like, you know, racist or sexist, but like to the degree that it was received, which was just multiple times a day, nonstop for weeks, I think that was probably where I was like, oh, this is horrible.
And like
I think,
threats, threatening your
yeah,
safety,
yeah,
stuff like that.
and lots of threats to my safety. And I think like that was probably, to a degree, I knew like some of that would happen, but I think to the extent and the fact that it was just relentless, and then the rest of the council also had to deal with it, and our meetings were so disrupted for months, I think that was really hard to just endure. So yeah, I don't know, that I think like that came through my mind, and I knew I never would quit because it was just like too much work. They'd have to have a special election paid with by the taxpayers' dollars. I was not doing that. I knew it would just blow up even more if I was like, oh, and then she quit. But I think there were definitely times where I was like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? I think that's probably the thoughts that I had of like, not I'm gonna quit, but like, why did I do this? Like, I'm not really made for public office in this way. And I think that was probably a lot of the stuff that came to my mind.
So I'm guessing you had a better sense of that kind of stuff was going to happen because you'd already been on the school board and even chaired the school board for a while and experienced some of that type of very personal harassment that's hard to take. Was there ever a time when you wanted to quit the council?
To me, the most critical moment, and it wasn't so much wanting to quit as much as like the escapism, right? Like I just want to escape. Like I need to hide my head, and it was too much. And it was, unfortunately, it was like before I even got on the council, it was during my campaign. And there were, you know, my time on the board, on the school board, pissed off enough people out here where my campaign was where I experienced the personal attacks. And I never felt like I wanted to quit, right? Like I think that kind of stuff does drive me. It like even to today when we talked about those proudest moments, there's a part of me that's like, you see, like you hate me, but I'm helping you. You know, like I can get past your hate because I'm here. Like again, the truth that I'm trying to get. And the campaign was so difficult that there were moments that people that I knew, it wasn't like strangers hitting you. You know, it was like people that you can see across the street throwing rocks at you, and that was super hard. And then walking to the council and you're like, all right, I survived that. And then you have the asshole across the aisle over there throwing rocks at you. And that the first year on the council, it like the external stuff was almost like, I don't care about that, man, but this room is toxic. You know, and having another counselor be like verbally and just every other way abusive to you and your peers without any meaningful effort to engage with you to try to figure out what's the beef here, just to like purposely attack you and to try to. I remember having to sit down with the Press Herald reporter with the ED and chair of my board for Cultivating Community to try to clear up some lies that he was spewing on social media about money that I'm stealing. I was like, that's the stuff that we're talking about. Amidst all the crises and all the people suffering in the city, this is where I'm spending. And I'm like, you want to escape for that because that's not what you walked. That's not what you wanted. So yeah, I think that those were the toughest moments.
This might be a good segue to one of my questions. I was going to ask you, if a good friend wanted to run for council, what advice would you give them? Like a good friend, a close friend, somebody you care about, not just an acquaintance, but somebody you care about.
I mean, it's like two sides of it because my perspective and experience will not be everybody's experience. And it hasn't been everybody's experience. So I think that that's important for me to remember. I think I would say do it, but have conversations with people that share your identity prior to running. So like if you talk to other women, talk to women of color, talk to Black women, and get their experiences as well. So make sure you kind of have an idea of like the different experiences, because we have out of, all the women of color in the council, like we've all had different experiences of how we're treated, how we're perceived, like good and bad by the public. So I think like those conversations are really important as well. And I would also say just like get your stuff prepared prior to going in so that on your worst day, you kind of have like a support system in place. You have like a network in place. You have you're just ready. Like if you're, like afraid to like leave your home, you have like, stuff that you can make, or you have like a friend you can call to like walk you to the meetings if you're afraid to go in, because sometimes it can be scary going in there. You don't know like what's waiting for you. So I would just say like prepare so that way you're ready. Hopefully you never have to kind of like deal with levels of harassment that have happened to people who are serving on the council, but just like be prepped, have your mental health plan in place too. I think that's really important. Have like your family is on board, your family knows, what could happen. I think just like over preparing would be really important. But I would definitely say like if you have a passion to serve, because I think that's the thing is like we've all served the city. So whether I have agreed with my colleagues on their policy or not, the level of respect that I have is the fact that we all jumped into this very volatile ring of like being perceived by the public regularly while also trying to make the city better in our own ways. Um, and that's super hard. So I think I commend anybody that wants to get involved. I just think it's like do your preparation, make sure you're like emotionally prepared for that. And talk to people and say like what's the worst day that you've ever had so that I can know that okay, that might happen to me, and how do I make sure that if it does, I'm prepared for it, I think would probably be my biggest advice.
I think that's spot on. Like there's there's a need to have partnerships, whether it's with the other counselors or if you come from like a policy one kind of perspective, like you need a good activist or organizing support so that then your policy is reflective of like the truth tellers. And I think if anybody's thinking about running for office, is that connect with your community, learn about the issues fundamentally, and then the solutions that you can bring forward. And I think you need a combination of partnerships to be effective here. And at any given time, there's 9 different ways to do it. So I would never tell anyone don't do it. You're not you don't fit the criteria. Or quite the opposite. I'm like, hell yeah, I should add one of my proudest moments. I don't know, it's kind of silly. I don't wear ties. I show up to city councils wearing sneakers, and like I want people to think like the everyday person can walk in here and just like, hey, you too can be part of the solution. And that, I think that's part of the whole changing that we've experienced over the last 3 years, is who's looking at this as a viable way to contribute to the communities.
I feel like I know you both well enough now to predict that you will remain engaged in community service one way or the other. You just, that's a fire in your belly, and you did it one way, a very structured way, and that's coming to an end, and you decided you didn't want to repeat it. What will that look like going forward for you? Do you know, or are you going to be finding out?
I don't know what that will look like, but I do agree because I think it's like you either like have that thing or you don't, where even if you're like, okay, I'm gonna sit back and just kind of not do anything, you're naturally gonna get involved in something. I just think like there's a pull. So regardless of like where I am or what I'm doing, I got into the council via activism. So I was doing that long before I was a counselor. So there will always be some level of like engagement that I'll be doing on like, am I joining something? Am I creating something? Like, how am I helping people? I just think that that's always going to be like kind of my I'm like almost like my unfortunate and fortunate quality and trait is like just that need to kind of like get involved in movements and like be part of change. So as much as I'm like, oh, I'm not doing anything, I'm gonna sit back, like I'm not gonna get involved in any social issues or any activism or organizing. There will be something that I get involved in, but it'll be nice to kind of have this experience of being on the council and being an activist and how different those lanes are, but the underlying similarities of saying like, where can I best contribute based on the experiences that I've had. So I don't exactly know what it looks like, but I do know that I love Portland and I love the district that I live in, and whether I'm here or not, I think I'll always kind of have my ear on like what's happening and how I can help, move forward change in any way possible.
I think probably doubling down on that, I know so much more of how it works, right? How does effective leadership work? How does effective policy making work? I have so many more connections in this community, and I'm engaged at a different level. So I think that whatever it looks like, hopefully it looks more effective, right? It looks like engagement at a deeper level, and a level that perhaps being inside of the council doesn't allow. I think that so many opportunities available right now, and just by virtue of having been engaged in this work for 3 years, and I think I'm gonna keep. I think I do need a break. I think I need to refocus some energy.
Sorry, because you have to keep doing the show.
Unfortunately, that's not happening for you.
I'll definitely stay engaged in it.
Well, you both ran a successful campaign, and of course, campaigns are all over the place for different, very narrow issues. And campaigning is a thing unto itself. It's not for everybody. It's real high energy. Yeah. It's a super team project where, a person has to realize you guys were kind of the figurehead of your campaign, but you could serve in other roles, of course, on a campaign that you cared about at the state level, at the national level, at the local level. So I'm excited to see what you do.
I think the background's where I'm at. I feel like it's not in the front, because it was a lot, but I think in the back is maybe more more my speed, so that feels good.
Well, I usually do the sign off at this point, but as I explained at the beginning of the show, Roberto Rodriguez is taking over as the host and producer of this show going forward. I'm really excited to hand off to him, and so I'm going to let him do the sign off tonight.
Yeah, Lisa, so first of all, thank you so much for the last 3 years hosting us and producing this show and organizing us and framing a lot of what we were feeling and that we really cared to share. So with you as a host, I think we've been able to really document this experience from a unique perspective, and I hope it's valuable to people. And I think to follow up on our last questions, I think me keeping this show and hosting it and inviting people here, maybe that's the way that I contribute, because I envision the show to be a way to engage with leaders in our community and people that are stepping up to make a difference for issues that we all care about. But I want to get to know these people better. I want to humanize the people that are making the change, so that when someone like Tori steps up and she's speaking the truth, people see that she's a human being and she's a member of your community and she's been here all along in one way or another, and they cannot dismiss her so easily. So hopefully that show, that's what it does, right? We humanize policymakers and we make the work really inclusive and part of the community. I'm really looking forward to it. I think, Lisa, I'm gonna ask you to come in at one point, because I really want to talk with you. Your history and your involvement in this community, and probably what you plan to do in the future, has meant a lot, and there's been moments in this show where you've shared it. So I think you'd be one of my guests for sure, and I think that'll be one of those people that I think people need to know more about. And so I'm looking forward to it and really excited for the opportunity, and I hope someone watches.
So our show is going to remain Pathways to Progress. It will still be at 7 p.m. on the second Friday of each month, and you can watch that on community TV channels 2, 5, or the YouTube channel also will live stream it, so you can watch it live, and then it's on YouTube after, and you can always take a look if you miss the live show. So thanks so much for being our audience. Couldn't have done it without you. Couldn't have done it without Warren Edgar, that's for sure. And thank you to everybody who's helped in production along the way. And thank you both. This has really been, you've been so generous with yourselves, and very busy people, not easy to fit this in.
Look at that, you guys ended with 2 minutes early.
Oh. Thank you, Warren.
Oh, yeah. Warren, oh my gosh. I think this is Warren's accomplishment more than anybody.
I'm going to be honest with you. I did not think that this was
Warren's I'm shocked that we're still here.
Oh, people can barely speak.